Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian Ant and welcome to 3303. This is where I take a look at the news and happenings in and around Elite Dangerous. Today we take a look at the results of a mega survey conducted on the player base. We take a look at what might be included in the upcoming beta, and Frontier confirmed the imminent drop-in of support for 32-bit Windows. Last week, a player by the name of Commander Win32 posted the results of a rather massive survey he undertook of Elite Dangerous players. Now, as Frontier would not allow the survey to be posted directly on the official forums, it was instead posted on the Elite Dangerous subreddit, as well as a few other Elite-related subs and some Discord channels as well. Now, 12,601 participants involved themselves with the survey, and Win32 explains that whilst he isn't a statistician, the number of respondents is suitable to be representative of the player base. However, he clarifies that the fact the respondents nearly all came from Reddit might skew things a bit. Now, whilst some have argued quite heavily and quite reasonably for a good number of reasons that the results of the surveys have no valid basis, I nonetheless personally find this information to be extremely interesting. So I'm going to take a very quick look at just some of the results here on this video, but if you do want to have a look at everything, then you can check out the links in the video description. The top link takes you to the survey itself, which you can see I'm looking at here. There is another link which will take you to a Google document, which will do a breakdown and go into a rather extensive analysis of all of these survey results. So we're going to jump in here. I'm only going to spend a few moments at this because I just want to look at a few things that stood out to me. In particular, we're looking at game mode here, open, solo and private group, with open having the majority of people actually responding for that, 49% in fact, and just 28% in solo, and a little less in 23% using private groups. Now, of course, some people might point out that between solo and private group, that does exceed open, and of course some of the private group here people might all be in Mobius. But nonetheless, it's nice to see, very interesting to see actually, just how large and how many people actually do play in open. We got the number of hours per week playing here. It's quite interesting to see that a lot of people only play less than 5 hours a week. Plenty are playing much more than that though. How would you describe your play style? Explorer is the majority, and I think many people may well be surprised to that, but personally I'm not at all surprised. Exploration is one of the key facts of the game, and it's also one of the main branches of the Elite Dangerous gameplay. 3 pillars: Explorer, Fighter and Trader. It makes sense then that so many people would choose Exploration. Bit of a shame, of course, because there really isn't a lot of exploration based gameplay out there, but nonetheless it still goes to show just how many people enjoy that style of gameplay. And if Frontier are going to do a reworking of exploration, I think that will go down very well. It's only natural to assume that many people would be involved in combat, and interesting to see so many people involved in trading. This is something I'd love to see another overhaul of, because trading is pretty limited, I do believe, at the moment. At least that's my personal impression of it. Now, you might be wondering how this can all exceed 100%, and that's because this is a multi-choice question. I don't think anyone would be surprised at this. Very few people regularly play at CQC, with 85% of the people saying none. Which future feature do you most want? Atmospheric planets, 70%. Not surprised with that either, although I would have expected to see space legs a little bit higher, although that's roughly the order I would have liked to see things in myself. Atmospheric planets is definitely the thing I'm very much looking forward to myself, so let's hope it's not too far away. More ships? I suspect the ship most people really want is the Panther Clipper. And exploration improvements. Of course, Frontier have implied they're doing this, so maybe some of these are not too far off. Interesting to see Thargoids so far down the list, especially considering that is the next patch. So then, like I say, if you want to check out some of these for yourself in more detail, then do check out the links in the video description below. And of course, good work to Commander Win32. Very, very impressive stuff. Now, I think by this point everyone knows that the beta for patch 2.4 is due to arrive on Thursday of this week. Now, that is a closed beta, as it were. That's for the people who have paid access. There is going to be a second phase which will be open beta, and that will allow everyone in. This, unfortunately, in both cases, all the betas only apply to PC players. Console players are going to have to wait for the live release of the update. Now, what is it going to include? Well, the update is not going to include any Thargoid content. Although Thargoids, of course, are the main part of the update, Frontier are keeping it out for story reasons. It's also been said that patch 2.4 is going to include much needed anti-Thargoid weaponry and modules. Now, from what I understand, although I could be mistaken here, this stuff is also not going to be in the beta either. So what is left? What is going to be included in this big update? Well, there are a few hints we've had. Frontier have confirmed a few things, and I have covered these before, so I'm only going to go into them very briefly here. And there may be some stuff right outside of this list, but if so, Frontier hasn't spoken about them at all yet. So what do we know? Well, there's going to be some new repair limpers for the hull. Sandra Samarco, lead designer, has confirmed that these are not going to be usable in combat, which is probably a good thing, but they're going to be a very good asset for players who like going out in deep space, especially explorers. And from what I understand, it will also be possible to replenish the repair limpets using the synthesis options from your ships. There's going to be some improvements to salvage. Now, salvage is one of the things I know many people wanted right from the early days of Elite Dangerous. In fact, Frontier showed off a fantastic video back in 2012 or early 2013, I believe during the Kickstarter period at any rate, about some concepts for salvage. And unfortunately, it didn't make it into the game in quite that way. Whether this update will extend it to that level, I doubt it. But nonetheless, it's nice to see here. So what we can see is a new menu. Whether or not this actually brings in a new gameplay is yet to be seen, but it includes a search and rescue content, search and rescue contact rather, and it also seems to imply there's going to be some search and rescue missions. Maybe there's a possibility then of increased number of shipwrecks in the future. There's going to be a new inbox UI with changes allowing for filtering, and if you look through the screenshots here, you can also see there's an audio log option. Maybe these are new. Another screenshot here also seems to imply that linked missions or chained missions will have 4 parts to them, or maybe even more. I believe at the moment they only have 2 parts, so that may also be a change. Additionally, the 2.4 should also include the long-awaited and much-mooted crime and punishment updates. One of these will include the change to the suicide winder, where people change into the sidewinder ship and destroy themselves or get themselves killed in order to avoid the rebuy costs of their more expensive ships. That's going to be removed, and you'll have to pay the rebuy cost of the largest ship you used during your crime spree. There's also going to be Federation bounties, so a new set of bounties that will apply right across civilized space, not just to local systems. And there's also going to be a new rebuy option on the rebuy screen, which will allow you to use your other ships and equipment as collateral to pay off your insurance. So then, like I say, I've covered most of this before in a little bit more detail, so I've run through it quite briefly here, just so everyone's got a bit of an idea of what to expect from beta. Now, one question that I've seen cropped up a few times, and one I find particularly interesting, is the nature of the Thargoids themselves. Now, apparently, this is going to affect all players one way or another, but the return patch 2.4 is a part of Horizon's content, that's Season 2. Yet it would seem to be that people without Horizons are also going to be getting the Thargoid content. So that leaves the question open then as to what happens to players who do have Horizons or players who don't have Horizons. Maybe whilst the Thargoid ships will be there for everyone, the anti-Thargoid weaponry will only be available to Horizons players. Who knows? It's something we're going to have to wait and see, unfortunately, but it does seem a little bit unclear at the moment. Nonetheless, the Thargoid content is something I'm very much looking forward to seeing finally arrive in the game. Today we got a bit of new information about Elite Dangerous, specifically about the 32-bit version of the game. Now, Frontier have long said they're going to eventually stop support for 32-bit version of Elite Dangerous, and that is now going to happen with the 2.4 release. Nearly a year ago, David Braben made a forum post announcing Frontier's intention to stop support for 32-bit Elite Dangerous. So it's taken a little bit more than his estimated time back then, which was at least 6 months. I guess that the at least point was pretty significant, as by the time 2.4 comes out, it will probably be September, and that makes it a year since his post was made. Now, apparently, Frontier have said that just 0.01% of the player base play with the 32-bit version of Windows, and Frontier are going to be reaching out to them directly to let them know of the upcoming change. Now, there's another aspect that Frontier didn't mention today in their update, and that's back in David Braben's original announcement. He mentioned that they're also going to stop support for DirectX 10. So there's no word at the moment as to whether or not that's going to be happening. So maybe that's something Frontier are going to clarify at a later date. So the reason they're making this change then is because Windows 32 does place quite some restrictions on the game itself, specifically in how the game can address memory. So they say that with the removal of Win32 and later the removal of DirectX 10, it will enable them to support higher end effects. That then brings us to an end of this episode of 3303. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.